It was quite a week. Florida couldn't have gone much worse for Tennessee, but they had to turn right around and go on the road to Texas and get a win, and they had to rally to do so. Do you have a biggest takeaway in seeing Tennessee play the way it did in the second half to get that win in Austin?
Well, toughness, that was probably the big thing. Winning time, those last 6-8 minutes when you had to do something. It just felt like they weren't going to get over the hump. Literally, I really didn't think they were going to win that basketball game as that second half was kind of playing out and progressing about midway through the second half. And then, Darlin Stone-Dubar comes off the bench and he hits some big shots for him. He's got that big follow dunk that kind of changes the game a little bit, gives some, flips it a little bit, gives some energy to Tennessee. And Zak Zieglers, I think he had 13 and 5 in the second half. I think, Jordan Gainey hit some big shots there late. So just the way they were able to flip it, because it had been a really, really tough week. The first half was a slog. The Florida game was a disaster. Then their trip to Austin's kind of different because they had to leave Thursday night to get ahead of the weather. So they're practicing in Austin on Friday, so it's a little bit of a different kind of rhythm thing. Rick Barnes is all about rhythm this time of year and staying in it, and they had to kind of get out of it. But, they answered the bell when they had to answer the bell, and they got a really, really tough road win against a Texas team that when they make shots like they made Saturday night, they're pretty tough. I mean, the SEC's tough top to bottom, but when Trey Johnson's doing what he did in the second half, or the first half and the first part of the second half, I guess, in that game Saturday night, just the way they responded was a pretty big answer for me.
Another thing that stood out to me, Grant, was how Zak Zieglers bounced back after getting hit in the stomach. He goes to the bench. He doesn't even look himself. Looks like he's about to throw up. Gets the breath knocked out of him. Usually you have players that just are not able to get back to that same level or exceed the level they were at before the injury or getting hurt. Well, we saw that with Zak Zieglers. It kind of reminded me of Nico in the Alabama game this past year, where he goes out, he comes back in, plays better. How do you think Zak was able to do that, and how important you thought that was in that basketball game? Excuse me.
One of my favorite Rick quotes after the game was he said, "At one point we just decided to space the floor and let the little guy go," and he did it. And he's talking about obviously Zak. There was one possession where I don't know what he was looking for, but he basically came off the screen. He just split two defenders and went to the rim and finished at the rim. I think it might have been a 3-point play that might have tied the game or something like that. I can't remember the exact circumstance, but not only did he come back in the game, he put Tennessee kind of on his back in the second half. Like they were asking him to kind of do everything to get everybody else going, and he was able to do. I think he was on the post-game ESPN or ESPN2, whichever channel it was on Saturday night, and they said, what percentage chance were you not going to come back in that game? And he said 0% chance he was going to come back in that game. He wouldn't have left the floor if he didn't feel like he was going to puke in that moment. I mean, that's who Zak is. He didn't want to come out against Florida Tuesday night when they're down 30 in the final couple minutes, and they're trying to rest him as much as they can because they're pretty thin, top to bottom, this basketball team. And that's just who Zak is. He doesn't want to leave the floor. Doesn't matter what the circumstance is, down 30 or coming back and winning like they did in the second half at Texas. He's that kind of competitor. He's that kind of toughness. There's reasons that Rick Barnes loved him. Those are the top reasons for sure.
Grant Ramey is with us, Volquest.com. We were talking last week on the show about Zak Zieglers. We think this is it. Who knows? Maybe there's something that happens to get him an extra year of eligibility. We think this is it. Don't take Zak Zieglers for granted because you only have him for a few more months.
For sure. I mean, and it's been like that really since I think they played North Carolina in November of his freshman year in that tournament in Connecticut. And I think they got whipped pretty bad against Villanova the next day. And they played North Carolina like 24 hours later, and Zak, we really didn't know what to expect of Zak. We knew he had impressed in his freshman preseason, and they weren't going to redshirt him like they had planned on redshirting him. But he scored like 17 or 18 against North Carolina, and Tennessee won that game, and it was a pretty huge response. And a lot of it was because of what Zak did off the bench. And it feels like ever since that day, he's just been, he's a 3-star no-name guy that they got in August before his freshman year, come out of nowhere. And he's just kind of been that toughness that Rick Barnes talks about his DNA nonstop. If you ask him about Zak Zieglers, he's going to talk about his DNA and how he wishes he could bottle it up. I mean, he's been the face of the program for a long time now, and he's living up to it this year. I mean, he's not even shooting that well this season, and he's still putting up really, really impressive numbers and leading this team. And that's just who Zak has been really since the day he got here.
Another story for this basketball team is how Rick Barnes has been able to win this year with every transfer that has come in from the portal. You look at the last 2 wins where Igor Milicic, he dominates the glass versus Arkansas, 18 rebounds, and then the win versus Texas, you have D-Stone go out there, hit a couple threes, have the big put-by dunk. I mean, I haven't seen Rick Barnes win this much in the portal. It didn't always start off that way with transfers, but this year seems like he's nailed every one of them.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a struggle there for a while, basically until Dalton Connect. And not only did he hit Dalton Connect, but, I mean, that was solid gold, kind of once-in-a-lifetime kind of generational talent that you found out of Northern Colorado. And it feels like they just – with Chaz Lanier, he felt like the perfect piece of the puzzle. Like, they had to go out and get him, and they had to survive Kentucky, and they had to survive BYU and all the NIL money and stuff that they were getting thrown at Chaz. And they won that one. He's lived up to the hype, and he's the reason. You can see why he was one of the biggest names in the portal with the way he shoots it. Igor, they felt like Igor was an underrated rebounder at Charlotte because he averaged 8.5 a game, and they played in one of the slowest tempos in college basketball. So if he comes here, they play a little bit faster. He's going to have more opportunities for more rebounds. So that was a big deal, and he's kind of lived up to that. I think he can be better offensively than he's been the last week. I think he needs to shoot it a little bit more. Seems like he's shying away from that. And then D-Stone is a little bit of a X factor kind of coming off the bench because you didn't know what you're going to get from him the first month and a half of the season. And he's been kind of stacking days a little bit and getting better and doing a little bit more. And then he comes in the second half, and I'll tell you what, he's fearless. He's not afraid to take that shot. He said he knew he was going to take that shot before the guy even passed it, the three in the corner to take the lead. And he's that guy that's going to turn around and talk to the crowd like he did at Texas. I mean, he went to Duke in December of his last year at Hofstra. I guess this was December 2023, and he scored 24 points and he hit 7 threes at Cameron Indoor, a tough place to play. So, I mean, that tells you what level he can play at, and it feels like he can help change this basketball team if he kind of keeps coming on and keeps progressing, keeps doing a little bit more.
So with that in mind, Grant Ramey of Volquest.com, seeing what D-Stone did on Saturday, looking ahead through all of what's coming in SEC play plus the postseason, what do you think about where Tennessee's depth, the rotation is right now and projecting forward?
I mean, it's still not great, but the thing is, Rick has traditionally played, between 7 and 9 guys, 9 at most, 7 at least. If you go back to that 18-19 team, it felt like they had a really strong 6-man rotation, then there's a 7th man, and then there's really nothing after that. The only difference this year is they don't really have those bodies at the end of the bench if these injuries keep happening. Like if Cade Phillips can't shake this shoulder issue and can't get fully healthy, that's going to hurt them a ton because they need him because they're just so thin behind him because of J.P. Estrella's foot issue and him being out for the year because Cam Carr left in December. Because all this other, I mean, they entered the season with 2 less scholarship players, or 2 scholarship spots open, I should say. So they don't really play that many players traditionally under Rick. Now they just can't afford the margin for error, the margin for injury is razor thin because they don't have those guys at the end of the bench in case of emergency. You just don't want those emergencies to happen. So it's not great, but they've made it work so far. And you would assume if they can stay relatively healthy, they'll continue to make it work.
Over the summer, Jamal Meshack made more threes than anybody. Why do you think we don't see the confidence shooting the basketball or some of the results that we heard about during the summer?
I don't know. I think he needs to see one go in. I think he was shooting it better earlier in the year. He injured that hand, the pinky on his left hand, which obviously it's not a shooting hand, but it's I guess it's affected him. I don't know if it's in his head a little bit. I think he made some progress at Texas scoring around the rim and knowing what to do with the basketball when he got it. Shot clock was running out on that one possession, and the ball's in his hands, and he just turned and scored it. They need him to be able to do that. They're going to have him make some shots. I mean, there's opposing coaches. I remember Brad Underwood said they were going to let Jamad take 26 shots if he wanted to take 26 shots because they knew that he was a guy that had never taken more than 6, 7, 8 shots in a game, so they weren't going to guard him that closely. And Rick has talked about this past week about other teams kind of backing off of Jamad and kind of turning it into a little bit of a one-man zone there. So he's going to have to make a shot at some point to make somebody respect him and to change the way defenses play Tennessee. Maybe it is one of those things where he just needs to get some confidence back and see one go in, and maybe that can help him out there. But it's something that's worth watching, and it's going to have to change for sure.
Hey, Grant, out the door, we do this sometimes with your colleague, Austin Price. We'll put him on the spot, give him an over-under for commitments in a month. Should we give Grant an over-under on Chaz Lanier threes on Wednesday against Georgia? He's back home, be more comfortable there.
Yeah, we do about 10.
10-3, so nine and a half.
We're due 10.
3 and
he's a little behind schedule, right?
Yeah, I mean, after the last 2 performances, I'm saying we are due.
He's going 10. After Lofton's record, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're due a ton.
Yeah, so do you want to give us a number? What's the number going to be? If I said it, the over-under 3.5, would you go over on Chaz threes on Wednesday? Is that too low of a number?
I would go over. I think it was the Arkansas game. I can't remember. Maybe it was a different game. But somebody asked me the night before, how many threes is Chaz going to make the next day? And I said 4. and that was the game where he made 4 threes in the first 8 minutes of the basketball game. So I think I'll go over because I almost got burned. Well, I did get burned about as quickly as you could get burned last time I tried to predict that.
Yeah, Chaz, back at home, take the over. I would do that as well. Grant Ramey, Volquest.com. You can read his work. Rob Lewis, what's going on with Tennessee basketball and the whole team with Tennessee football, basketball, baseball updates now as we're getting closer to the season there. Grant, thanks for the time as always. Great to see you. Great to talk to you and hope to do so again soon.
Thanks, boys. Thanks for having me.